Hello, good morning. So I'm doing this recording just to guide you with your presentation. But I think most of the things haven't changed if you look at the presentation outline, the background, and other things. The most important thing now, which that's what they'll be looking out for, will be the um, starting from the methodology. Uh-huh. So there's a little bit of modification with this one as compared to the one I sent earlier. So just some few things just to make things very easy. So I'm going to start from here and explain the things that you see. So for methodology, there's a conceptual framework, and in our conceptual framework, we are trying to look at the independent variables, which includes the leave policy, the annual policy, the sick leave policy, the maternal and paternal leave policy, and the flexible working hours. How they impact or how they affect dependent variables, organizational commitment, and turnover intentions. So, in terms of the tools that we used Google Scholar to get access to journals for our literature review, and then we use Mendeley for our referencing. We also relied on Google Forms to design a structured questionnaire and also for the distribution. We ended up printing a few ones on hard paper, but then most of our respondents used the Google form. So the hard paper was a backup. Now for the analysis tool, we use SPSS. And then we also had to have some ethical consideration because we didn't want to overly expose, sorry, we didn't want to overly expose our respondents. So we didn't take their names and phone numbers and other details. That would be very sensitive. So for the sampling technique, we use purposive sampling technique because we had to target those who are working and also engage in employment so that we can actually get the things that we want. We looked at undergraduate students engaged in employment. That was our population. And our sample size, forgive me, let me change this one right away. This will be 200. So our sample size was 200. So here we come to the data presentation and analysis. So after getting our data, we needed to do some analysis to see the demographic information. So we are going to start with the demographic information. We discovered that about 64% of our sample population were males, and then 36% were females. This gender distribution did not affect our work because our work had nothing to do with gender. Okay. But then in some instances or with some research, if this was the case, probably then we would have to balance things up. But we were just concerned about the person being a student and also working. Then when it comes to the age distribution of our population, we realize that those within the age bracket of 21 to 25 were in the majority, followed by those around 35 to 31 to 35. And then the least the people with the least population we had was those within 36 and 34. Okay, so some side notes. Now the point is you don't have to mention all of them. Okay, so that's why I said the majority followed by and then you go to the list. It's as simple as that. I mean, the rest of the things they will see. So we come to the educational information. So for their level of education, we also discovered that for level 100 students, we had about 116 from our population. Then we followed by the level hundreds. This was level 400, followed by level 100, and then level 300, and finally we had only 18 people who are level 200 students. Now, when we come to the years of work, the number of years they have worked, we also discovered that for between 1 to 3 years was in the majority, followed by those who had worked 10 years and above. And the least was between, I mean, 4 to 6 years, and then 7 to 9 years all shared the same value as 16 people each. So here we are looking at our analysis of the data that we collected. So we are going to juxtapose our objectives, because our objectives are what we want to do, and the objectives are what we want to do, and the analysis will reflect on the methodology we use. So our first objective was to ascertain the work-life balance policy, organizational commitment, and turnover intentions of undergraduate students. And we use description of the mean, standard deviation to analyze that. Our second objective was to evaluate the influence of work-life balance policies on organizational commitments of undergraduate students engaged in employment. And over here, we use a linear regression to do the analysis. The third objective was to investigate the relationship between work-life balance policy and turnover intentions among undergraduate students engaged in employment. And we also use the linear regression model to get our analysis. So here we go to the first objective, which was to use the means and the standard deviations to get information on the work-life balance policy. So this was the data that were related to work-life balance policies. So there were 12 questions in all, and I'll just give the highlights. And I think this is what you should say. Okay. So the most significant ones we saw was, okay, for instance, with a question on I am satisfied with the annual leave work-life balance policy provided by my organization, the mean was about 3.66. So the scale was between 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Or people who chose 5 meant I strongly agree, and those who chose 1 meant I strongly disagree. So a mean of 3.66 is above the average. So over here, what this 3.66 means, majority of the people were satisfied with the annual leave work-life balance policy provided by the organization, and the standard deviation was a 1.14, which also means that, okay, this 1.14 is very small. So if it is very small, then that means the there isn't a deviation from the various choices that were made, in a sense that a lot of people actually believe that they are satisfied with their work-life balance policy, their annual leave work-life balance policy provided by the organization. Same can be said for the question that I am satisfied with the maternity leave and paternity leave work-life balance policy, and over here to be had a very high mean, which shows that a lot of people agree with that, or they strongly agree. And then also, I am satisfied with the steady leave work-life balance policy provided by a lot of people. And then overall, I'm satisfied with the sick leave work-life balance policy, also with a very high. Now, we also discovered that some of them came very low. For instance, when we looked at, my organization has a well crafted policy document on work-life balance, and we have a lot of people strongly disagreeing. Now, we discovered that, especially with the annual leave, the maternity and paternity leave, the steady leave, and also with the sick leave, for a lot of the people we engaged, we realized that they were in the formal sector of employment. And in the formal sector, these policies are codified, or they are written into law. And for which reason, if you have an annual leave, that one, you are going to have it. It is not a matter of your employer saying that you can go or you cannot go. In the same case of having maternity leave or paternity leave, it is something that you are most likely to get if you're a female and you're about to deliver, your you request for maternity leave. So these ones were strongly accepted by our respondents. Then we go to questions that were specific to organizational commitments. And over here, we discovered that a lot of people, I mean, this is very closer to 4, saying that they feel committed to their current employer. Also, A lot of our respondents said they feel proud to be part of their current organization, and I recommend my organization to as a good place to work. A lot of people as well, and the standard deviations were also minimal, so a lot of people seem to agree. Then we go to questions that were around turnover intentions, and over here was a little bit of a drop if you are to compare it with the organizational um, commitment questions. So the organizational commitments were on the high, and then the turnover intentions were on the low. So, for instance, I often think about leaving my current job or your current job in this particular instance, and a lot of people were below the average over here. Okay, so we have a 2.12 with a lot of people also agreeing because the standard deviation is very small. So we have a lot of people not willing to leave and a lot of people willing to stay. So having gone through that, we also needed to do this for or to achieve our second objective, which was to use linear regression to analyze the data that we had. So this table is giving us a summary of the regression analysis. But then there are some key points that we can find over here, and that's work-life balance policy have a strong positive correlation with organizational commitment, and that's being given by our R value. So with our R value, the closer we are to one, that means there's a linear correlation. But then this is a 0.76, which is very close to 1. So the closer we are to 1, then that means there's a positive. It was negative, then that will probably be in the opposite direction. But this one, they are all moving in the same direction. So there's a strong positive correlation with um, work-life balance policy and organizational commitment, which also means that if you are an organization and you have a good work-life balance policy, the people in your organization will intend to commit. Now, work-life balance policy accounts for about 57% of the variations in organizational commitment. So that was a R squared value. That's about 57%. And then even after the adjustments, work-life balance policy still remains relevant. So even after adjusting, it still remains relevant at 0.547%. Yeah. Now, a standard error of 0.748 suggests that the factors also other factors also influence organizational commitment, because this is also very high, very close to one. So it means that, well, in as much as organizational commitment has a positive correlation with work-life balance policy, there could be some other factors, and those other factors are what we also discovered from the turnover intentions. Now, over here, we are still on the organizational commitment, and in here, we are looking at the ANOVA analysis. Now, sorry, the most important thing you need to mention is that over here, we are trying to test the p-value. Okay, the p-value is the significance value of F statistics. So now, if the p-value is less than a 0.05, then the independent variable do not um, 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 they do a good job in explaining the dependent variables. So remember, and I'm saying this, don't go and say that. So remember, we have the on the conceptual framework, we are trying to link that conceptual framework diagram. No? We are trying to link how the effects of the independent variable are influencing the dependent variable. So if it is below a 0.5, 0.05, then it has a very strong influence. Now, in our analysis, we discovered that this is the significance. It is very, 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 very low. So, if it is very low, then actually it means that it is a good model that we have. So, in this analysis, the p-value is well below the 0.05, and it is actually a 0.00000000045. So, and the regression sum of squares is a 75.66. That's what we have over here, which shows that our model is good. Now, when it comes to turnover intentions, we have some interesting data over here. Over here too, we realize that, well, the work-life balance policy have a moderate influence on turnover intentions with a correlation of about 0.426. That's what we see over here. So previously, organizational commitment had a zero point 0.7 something, which meant that was very high. This one is below the average. The average will be a zero point 0.5. That's the middle ground. But over here, we are below the average, which tends to suggest that organi- um, work-life balance policy has a stronger correlation or has a stronger influence to organizational commitment than turnover intentions, which means if, for instance, my organization has um, um, a good work-life balance policy that allows me to, for instance, have steady leave and do other things, I tend to commit more than to leave. Now, work-life balance policy explain about 18.1%. I'm very sorry for the interruption. I had a call. So this one, we are also saying that work-life balance policy explains 18.1% of the variation in turnover intentions, showing that there's a partial impact. It's not as strong as we saw in the case of organizational commitment. So the adjusted R value is 0.14, which is very low, and the the standard error is 1.22, suggests that other significant factors also have influence. Now, with regards to the ANOVA analysis, over here too, we are more concerned about the significance of the F. And we also realize that, okay, this one too was way below the 0.05 benchmark. So over here too, we can see that there's a lot of relevance in terms of it being able to explain that. So to our conclusions, now we can conclude based on the analysis, the data that we have in the overall work that students engaged in employment are more committed to their employees or workplaces when they have flexible working conditions and a supportive work-life balance policy. Now, work-life balance policy have greater impact on organizational commitment than turnover intentions, like we saw. Even though both of them have um, some impact, work-life balance policy will have more impact on organizational commitment than turnover intentions. Now, without sufficient work-life balance policy support, students who are engaged in employment are most or are more likely to leave their workplace, resulting in high turnover rates. Now, implementing an effective work-life balance policy can enhance organizational commitment, reduce turnover intentions, and ultimately benefit both the employees and organizations. So, to some recommendations that we are making out of this work. Now, management of institutions should implement measures to enhance the working conditions through the development of work-life balance policy. This is very obvious because once you have a comprehensive work-life balance policy, you tend to have a lot of your employees committing to longer stay at work. Now, institutions must regularly review and update their work-life balance policy to adapt to the changing working environment and promote flexibility. So, some years ago, the idea of working from home, um, probably a lot of employees will not even give it a thought. But then, because of COVID and other things that came, we realized that, well, we should try it. And I think some workers will prefer having to work from home if their work can accommodate that. So institutions must incorporate remote work options into work-life balance policy for flexible student work arrangements, so that students are able to manage their work life and also their educational life. Now, there should be a stakeholder engagement involving the worker unions, the labor consultants, and the national authorities to develop effective work-life balance policy, because all these stakeholders have some kind of influence. Okay, so these are references, and thank you very much. So I believe this will be the end of the presentation, and I think most of the things makani be brave, but I believe you can distill the main things that you need and also make a very good presentation. But then you can practice. Watch this video about 3 or 4 times and also practice on your own some of the key things I've said over here. But then make sure you are not reading back to them. Okay. Just have a story around it. You can, because probably it's going to be an online presentation, you can actually write what you are going to say. Okay. So you are not reading exactly what's on the slide, but then you are reading from your book or whatever. That would be even be more better than reading from the slides. Okay, so thank you very much. Bibi Ache Madrian, you can get back to me and we'll discuss that.